Lupita Mañana, Chapter 6, Part 2, starting on page 79. A blaze of light illuminated the service station where the truck driver had stopped. Lupita glanced at the overhead sign. It was not in Spanish. "Come on, run!" Salvador's hand grabbed hers and jerked her suddenly forward. Using the parked truck as cover, they ran across the road, dodging an oncoming car whose horn blared at them. They heard men's shouts behind them, but there was no sound of pursuit. At the edge of the highway, the ground sloped sharply. Lupita and Salvador scrambled down it, through weeds still wet from the rain. They crossed a small, soggy-bottomed ditch before they got to the line of low, dark buildings on the left side of the highway. Still hand in hand, the two of them ran until they came to a building with projecting loading platform. Salvador halted and let go of Lupita's hand. Dropping onto all fours, he hastily crawled under the platform. Lupita followed as swiftly as she could and sat far back in the darkness. "Bueno, Lupita," he panted. "You did well just now." Breathless from the run, Lupita could only nod in the blackness. While she pressed her hand against a painful stitch in her side, she heard a booming sound in the distance. A train. She had seen trains in Tijuana. "Lupita, did you hear that?" "See, it is a train." "Bartolo told me there would be trains near the warehouses just over the border. We'll go in a moment to look for the train tracks." "Why do we want the tracks?" "To find a train to Indio, estúpida. Bartolo warned me not to walk along the roads near the border. He said the Gringo border patrol travels back and forth all the time looking for Mexicans, asking for cards to show that they are pochos, Mexican Americans, or that they have a card that says they can work here. They will catch us when we do not understand their English." Lupita said nothing, but she felt a little better about having given Bartolo her cross. This Bartolo knew a thing or two. "Bartolo told me we are to stay hidden and to listen hard," Salvador continued. "Listen?" "Si, listen." Huddled under the loading dock, Lupita heard nothing but the small night wind and the noise of the wet weeds brushing against one another. Then, all at once, she heard voices whispering in Spanish. "That is what Bartolo said we were to listen for. Someone speaking Spanish," Salvador said. "Come out now, Lupita. Bartolo said not to travel alone. It is not safe." They crawled out and stood in the shadows beside the warehouse. Soon, a little group of Mexicans, a man, a woman, and two half-grown children, came past them. "Call out to them, Lupita," Salvador ordered. "Ask about Indio." "Señor, señora," Lupita called softly. "Por favor, señor." "Who is it?" The man's voice sounded startled. "My brother Salvador Torres and me. We want to find the city of Indio. Where is it? Do you know?" "No." The man hesitated, then said, "Come here. Let me see you." Lupita and Salvador stepped out of the shadows. They saw a small, overall-clad man with a wispy beard. "I am named Rosario," he said. "Do you have cards to work here?" "No, Señor Rosario," replied Salvador. "Ah," he sighed, "then you are like me. I have come over here 4 times, but always the gringos caught me and sent me back. I have brought my wife and children with me this time. We are going to Los Angeles." "It was lonely for him in Los Angeles without us," Rosario's wife explained. Salvador interrupted. "Do you know how I can find out where Indio is?" "No," Señor Rosario shook his head, "but this Indio must be north of here. Everything in California is north of here. We will take a northbound train ourselves. Come with us." "How do we know where to get off the train?" Salvador asked. "I will tell you when we come to Los Angeles. I will look after you two till we get there." "Gracias, señor," said Salvador. "Bueno, some good luck at last," thought Lupita as she brought up the rear of the little procession. Señor Rosario soon found the railroad tracks, and they all started walking northward. How fortunate they were to fall in with this clever Señor Rosario. In a while, the man lifted his hand and pointed to some building beside the tracks. They walked over, and then halted in the shadows, waiting. They did not wait long before a round yellow light came toward them. Then they heard the sound of a train. It passed them slowly, grinding to a halt ahead of where they stood. Lupita saw scarlet sparks rise from the metal wheels as they slowed to a stop. Quickly, men with flashlights came down off the train, and more came out of some buildings over the tracks. The men set to work uncoupling freight cars and attaching new ones onto the train. Senor Rosario spoke above the noise. "We go as soon as the men with the lights have left." Finally, the railroad workers finished. Senor Rosario went forward with his family trailing him. Lupita and Salvador came behind. Rosario stopped beside a boxcar with a half-open door. He lifted one child into the car after the other. Then he got in himself and helped his wife scramble up. Lupita was about to pull herself up too when Salvador caught her by the arm and pointed to the next car. It was a strangely shaped metal one with a tower on top. "It carries flour or grain," Salvador whispered rapidly into her ear. "Rosario says it will be empty when it goes north to Los Angeles. He has ridden in such cars before. He would choose it now, but his children are too small to get out of it. Come on, hurry." There was a steel ladder on the side of the hopper car. Salvador pulled himself up, lifted up the metal cover, and dropped down inside. Lupita followed, going up the ladder as fast as she could and falling with a thud onto the bottom of the car. Never had she known such absolute darkness. "Salvador," she called out, frightened. "I am here. Be quiet. Do you have the cloth bag and the matches?" "Si, I have them." "Get me a match." Lupita reached into the bag and after some rummaging found the matches. Salvador struck one along the side of the steel car, and during its brief blaze they inspected the hopper. To Lupita's surprise, it was not black at all, but dusty white. There was a ladder up to the top on the inside, too. Suddenly, Lupita heard shouts. She sank down as Salvador blew out the match. "What is it?" she asked fearfully. "I do not know. I'll go up to see." Panic-stricken, Lupita was not about to be left alone in the darkness. She climbed up behind Salvador and struck her head up over the turret. Holding fast to Salvador, she crowded her slight body against his. "Ay de mi!" Men with flashlights and pistols on their hips were walking beside the train. When they came to a boxcar, they hauled open the doors and shone the lights inside. A man with a bass voice called out in Spanish, "Traigo una pistola! Levántese los manos! I have a pistol! Raise your hands!" Lupita looked on in dismay as Senor Rosario and his family jumped out of their boxcar. To her surprise, 3 young Mexican men followed them. The railroad guards handcuffed Senor Rosario to one of the young men and handcuffed the other 2 together. Another guard led Senor Rosario's weeping wife and children away. Tears came to Lupita's eyes. "Lupita, get your head down," Salvador hissed as he ducked his head out of sight below the turret. Lupita scrunched down, and Salvador quickly pulled the hatch shut as far as he could. Seconds later, they saw the beam of a flashlight through the crack that remained open. Lupita held her breath in terror. Would they be flushed out too? Would one of the railroad guards climb up to the hopper car, open the turret, and shine his light down inside the car?